Domestic violence campaigners have called on civil courts to take much more care in protecting the location of vulnerable victims who fled their abuser. The call comes after a number of cases in which victims have been tracked down by their former partners and subjected to further harassment. An investigation for this programme has discovered that some lawyers are advising their clients not to seek injunctions because of the danger that their former partner will be given their new address. Our Home Affairs correspondent Darshna Sunny has been hearing the story of one such victim.
Emotionally, I was an absolute wreck, not just because I was frightened, but because I just thought I was worthless. He didn't look at me like I was a human being. He didn't treat me like I was. He treated me like a dog. You know, I was only there to be kicked when he was in a bad mood.
Christabel Young met her former partner when she was aged just 17.
I lived with him for about 8 years. He was emotionally controlling to begin with, and that ended in domestic violence, some of which was sexual, and he tried to kill me a number of times. And so it was...
Finally, after 8 years, she left. Ms Young relied on friends and family who put her up in a safe house, but she also relied on the civil courts for protection. Her ex knew her place of work, knew where her parents lived. He'd regularly turn up and threaten her.
You know, he'd attack me in the street before then and when I was in my car. So.
The one thing her former partner didn't know was her address. Until it was revealed to him by the very court she had turned to for protection.
We went to court to get the non-molestation order for my protection, to keep him away from me. But my full home address had been written on the order and handed to him. And with 10 minutes of him receiving that, he was outside my house, banging on the door, on the windows, and threatening me.
So that must have been incredibly frightening.
Well, terrified and angry. So yeah, so any tiny bit of safety I'd felt had just gone.
Ms Young was forced to flee again from the only place of safety she had known in years. But she's far from alone. We visited numerous courts and spoken to women across the country who've had the same bitter experience. Women put at risk and afraid for their lives. The Crown Prosecution Service does have guidelines in place to protect those who have suffered domestic violence when their cases reach criminal courts. But here in the civil courts, their experiences are very different. We've spoken to a number of victims who say that their personal details, including telephone numbers and addresses, have been disclosed. There's worrying evidence that some violent abusers are purposely bringing civil court proceedings as a way of finding out their ex's contact details.
I have dealt with several cases where fathers have managed to get the address of the mother even though she's fled to the other side of the country by starting court proceedings for contact with the children, and then the address has been disclosed to father to enable him to serve papers on mother, but the effect of that is that he then has mother's address, and that puts her at risk.
Why is it happening? Is it administrative errors, or...?
I think it's a lack of thought, that the courts don't realise the impact of it.
Some solicitors say they're so concerned that they often advise women not to apply for injunctions because of the risk of their location being disclosed. The Ministry of Justice told us that the courts regularly handle extremely sensitive cases and have a range of measures to support vulnerable victims. But campaigners say these measures aren't enough.
It's simply unacceptable, and it's vital that we work together to improve the way our courts work. They've made great strides, but there's much more to be done to really say that victim safety is at the centre of what we're all doing.
Christabel Young's partner was eventually convicted of a serious assault against her. Shortly after his release from prison, he suffered a fatal heart attack. The only reason, she says, she feels able to speak out. But the effects of that one error made by the court still haunt her.
That's a very difficult thing to shake. Still now it's a difficult thing to tell myself that perhaps I am worth a bit of safety.